Before I start, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss stories like this. Trust me, some of the twists in today's story will leave you speechless. I never thought a single conversation could change everything in my relationship. My name is Ethan, and for the past 3 years I had trusted Clara completely. We shared a small apartment in the city, a routine filled with cozy evenings, grocery runs, and lazy Sunday mornings. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. But as with most relationships, the truth was layered beneath calm smiles and seemingly ordinary gestures. It all started one evening after work. I came home to find Clara scrolling through her phone, her face lit up by the screen, that familiar mix of concentration and excitement I had seen before. But this time it wasn't just work emails. She looked up at me and said casually, almost too casually, "I've been talking to Alex again." Alex. Her ex. The words hit me like a punch I hadn't seen coming. Not because I doubted her loyalty, Clara had always been transparent, but because of the tone. It wasn't a casual mention. It wasn't. I ran into Alex and we talked a little. It was deliberate, almost defiant. I felt a tension in the air, thick enough to choke on. Yet I remained seated on the couch, my coffee steaming in my hand, my voice steady. "You've been talking to him. Again?" I asked, keeping my tone calm, almost too calm, because I had learned early on that losing control of your emotions gives the other person the power. Clara's eyes flickered for a brief second, just enough to betray her surprise that I hadn't reacted with anger. "Yes," she replied, shrugging. "I don't see the harm. He's my ex and we've been friends for years. I can handle talking to him without it affecting us." I nodded slowly, carefully choosing my words. This wasn't about confrontation. This was about testing boundaries, revealing where respect truly lay in our relationship. "Clara," I said, my voice low, "I never asked you to cut off your friends, but when your ex becomes a constant in our conversations, in our evenings, and even in our plans, it's no longer just friendship. It's something you expect me to accept without question." Her smile faltered, a slight crease forming between her eyebrows. She was expecting a fight, a dramatic storm. But I remained calm, sipping my coffee as if nothing extraordinary had happened. That calmness, my refusal to escalate, was already starting to unnerve her. "You're making it sound like I'm cheating or something," she said defensively, leaning against the kitchen counter. "I'm just keeping a connection. Alex and I have history. That doesn't mean anything to how I feel about you." I placed my cup down and leaned forward slightly. "History doesn't disappear, Clara. But respect does. If you want us to have a future, if you want me to feel secure, there has to be a line. And your ex, he's crossed it repeatedly in your words, in your attention, and in the way you let him linger in your life while I remain your present." Her eyes widened. For the first time in months she was speechless. Not because she had nothing to say, but because my calm clarity hit harder than any argument could have. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, each second amplifying the tension. Clara shifted slightly, avoiding my gaze. As if searching for a way to argue her point without crossing an invisible line she suddenly realized existed. I could see it in her eyes, the flicker of doubt, the first hint that my calm demeanor was not weakness, but a mirror reflecting her choices back at her. "You're serious?" she finally whispered, her voice uncertain. "You really feel that strongly about this?" I nodded slowly, my expression unwavering. "I don't just feel strongly. I feel respected or not respected. And right now, I feel like you're asking me to accept a situation that undermines us. That asks me to ignore my own boundaries, my own feelings. I can't do that, Clara. Not calmly, not silently, and certainly not while pretending it's okay." For a moment I considered walking away, leaving the room, letting the tension simmer. But instead I stayed. I wanted her to see, to feel the weight of my words without me raising my voice. There's a power in calmness that anger can never replicate. It forces introspection. It demands accountability. Clara took a deep breath, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her sweater. I don't understand why this matters so much to you. Alex isn't here. He's not in our lives in any real way. That's not the point, I said firmly. It's never just about the person. It's about where you place your energy, your attention, your emotional space. When someone else, especially an ex, gets that much presence in your life, it diminishes the space we share. It diminishes trust, Clara. And without trust, what we have becomes fragile, easily broken. She paused, visibly shaken, perhaps because this was the first time in weeks she'd been confronted with the emotional consequences of her choices. In her silence, I could sense the internal debate raging. Should she defend the relationship, or protect the lingering comfort of familiarity with her ex? I didn't push. I let the words hang like a blade suspended midair. The calmness in my tone contrasted sharply with the storm I knew was brewing inside her mind. This was the subtle art of confrontation. Not to yell, not to plead, but to make the truth unavoidable. Finally, she whispered, I didn't realize you felt this strongly. I do, I said, standing up now, slowly, deliberately. And it's not about controlling you, Clara. It's about honoring what we have. If you can't see why your choices impact us, then we need to rethink what we're really doing here. She sat down, finally looking at me, her eyes glossy. For the first time, I saw vulnerability, doubt, and clarity collide on her face. My calm had done what words shouted in anger never could. It had pierced the defenses she had carefully constructed around her comfort zone. And then the moment came, the one I knew would mark a turning point. She opened her mouth, trying to formulate a response, but nothing came out. She was speechless. Not because I had won an argument, but because she realized the weight of her decisions in a way she hadn't before. The calm clarity was a mirror, and she didn't like what she saw. Clara sat there, still speechless, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. I took a slow breath, letting the silence stretch just enough to give her space to reflect. In that pause, I could see the battle within her, the pull of old habits and the sudden awareness that our relationship wasn't something to take lightly. I thought I could keep him in my life without it affecting us, she finally admitted, her voice trembling. I didn't realize it was hurting you this much. I shook my head gently. Clara, it's not just about me being hurt. It's about respect, commitment, and knowing where your priorities lie. Love isn't just about words or promises. It's about the choices we make every day, the lines we honor, and the boundaries we don't cross. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of genuine understanding. She had expected me to react with anger, maybe jealousy, maybe drama. Instead, my calm, measured response forced her to confront the truth herself. That's the power of composure. It exposes intentions without a single raised voice. I see it now, she whispered. I didn't mean to disrespect us. I didn't think about it that way. I smiled faintly, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of relief, of hope. It's not about winning, Clara. It's about making sure we're on the same page, that we respect each other enough to protect what we have. If we can't do that, then no amount of love or chemistry will save us. There was a long pause, a moment suspended in time where the apartment seemed to shrink around us. The tension didn't vanish instantly, but it transformed. It shifted from confrontation to understanding. She finally nodded, slowly, deliberately. It was a small gesture, but in that nod, I could see the beginning of accountability. I'll cut him off, she said, her voice steadier now. Completely. I don't want him interfering in what we have. I want us. Hearing those words, I felt a mixture of relief and cautious optimism. This wasn't the end of challenges, relationships rarely are, but it was a turning point. She had chosen clarity, respect, and our shared future over lingering attachments and comfortable patterns. She had spoken the words that proved she understood the stakes. I reached out and took her hand gently, firmly. Thank you, Clara. That means more than I can say. It doesn't erase the past, but it sets the stage for something real. Something we both can trust again. For the rest of the evening we talked. No yelling, no dramatics, just conversation. The kind of honest, deliberate exchange that rebuilds foundations. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magically easy, but it was real and it was ours. As I finally lay down that night, I realized that the calmest response often carries the most weight. Anger can intimidate, words can wound, but clarity and composure, they demand introspection, reflection, and ultimately change. Clara had been speechless, yes, but not from fear, not from defeat. She was silent because she had finally understood the true cost of her choices. And that silence, that realization, was worth more than any argument, any fight, or any dramatic display could ever achieve.